Thank you so much for joining us today. And in this video, I'll be going through the Electric Vehicle Council's State of Electric Vehicles report from July 2023. And congratulations to the EV Council for producing such a comprehensive report on the state of EVs in Australia. Well done. I'm going to read some of this introduction, which is a nice summary of the report. So over the past 12 months, interest in electric vehicles has significantly expanded. While Australia has still some way to go in ensuring local EV adoption aligns with our emission reduction targets, at least in the light vehicle market, we are seeing early positive signs that demand is trending in the right direction. 8.4% of all new cars sold in 2023 so far have been EVs. This is more than a 120% increase compared to all of 2022. While this trend is encouraging, it is important to note that the vast majority of EV sales is made up of only three models: Tesla Model Y, Tesla Model 3, and BYD Atto 3, representing 68% of the EV market. That shows incredible dominance by Tesla and BYD. There are now 91 electric car, van, and ute models in Australia. Most of these are only being supplied in small volumes. And that's because Australia does not have a new vehicle efficiency standard to ensure car manufacturers increase the supply of EVs to our country. And the EV Council is obviously working very hard to ensure that happens soon. And that's what the EV Council will be doing, calling on the government to ensure a globally competitive new vehicle efficiency standard is introduced to Parliament before the end of this year. We've got 5 more months left in this year, and this needs to happen soon. And this will help support Australia's emission reduction targets, but also helps to secure a wide range of affordable EVs of all shapes and sizes for Australian households and businesses to slash their fuel bills. We still have a lot of work to do catching up to leading EV countries, but every state, territory, and the federal government is now actively supporting the uptake of zero-emission technology. And of course, early 2023 saw the Australian government release its first national EV strategy. A step in the right direction, which is great. When it comes to heavy EVs, such as buses and trucks, we're still lagging due to a lack of regulatory reform by governments to enable uptake. There is strong interest from industry, but this interest is being held back by a lack of suitable vehicles, of course. And also a result of Australian governments imposing restrictive vehicle mass and width requirements that increase costs and limit the range of electric buses and trucks to be sold in Australia. Without immediate action, the decarbonisation of Australia's 800,000 buses and trucks will continue to be delayed, unfortunately. So yes, this is why Australia needs to realise the long-term opportunities represented by the transition to EVs and support the creation of thousands of jobs through development of Australian critical minerals, batteries, components, chargers, and vehicles of all shapes and sizes. And EV Council, of course, is doing a lot to advocate for this change, which is fantastic. Good. All right, let's move on to some of these graphs, which are very interesting. So this is a nice summary graph. Of course, this is the team at EV Council led by Behat Jafari, which is the CEO of EV Council. Well done, team. So let's zoom in on the highlights from 2023. This is where the money is at, so to speak. So 46,624 EVs have been sold year to date, up to June 2023. This is more than the total number of EV sales in 2022 altogether. And 8.4% of all new cars sold are now EVs up to date to July 2023. This is an increase of 121%, up from 3.8% in 2022. The ACT leads Australia on 21.8% of all new cars being EVs, and 30% are Tesla Model Ys. They accounted for 30% of all sales, or EV sales, so far. So top 5 EVs sold in 2023, not surprisingly, is the Tesla Model Y at 14,000, Tesla Model 3, 11,500, BYD Atto 3, 6,100, MG ZS EV, 1,700, and Volvo XC40, 1,596. So good to see affordable cars like the MG ZS EV there, just behind Tesla and BYD. And surprisingly to see Volvo there as well. I thought it'd be either Volvo or Polestar leading the charge there in the top 5. So there's a 56% increase in variants from 2022. 91 models, 148 variants. Good to see more BEVs now than PHEVs overall. 22 electric trucks and commercial vans, 22 models of electric buses, and 42 models of 2 3-wheelers. Charging highlights. Now, this is very interesting because this is where it's at. We need more chargers for sure. So, greater than 967 high-power public chargers, presumably this is level 2 and above, in 558 locations in Australia. 438 of them were fast charger locations, and this is the definition of fast charging versus ultra fast charging, which there were 120 of in Australia. This is a 57% increase from 2022. So EV Council has classified fast charging as anywhere from 24 to 99 kilowatts DC, and ultra fast charging is 100 kilowatt plus DC fast charging. I agree, we need to see more 100 kilowatt fast chargers, given there are more variants and models coming into the country soon as well. So the scorecard, which EV Council explains a bit later on, it looks like federally 7 out of 10. So yeah, good to see. It's up from last year. ACT New South Wales lead the charge, 9 out of 10. Northern Territory 4 out of 10. Queensland 7 out of 10. I think probably bolstered by their good subsidies up there. South Australia 6 out of 10. Tasmania 4 out of 10. Victoria 5 out of 10. More commentary on Victoria very shortly, of course. And WA 6 out of 10. Electric car sales. So sales of electric cars have continued to increase, with the total volume of sales in the first half of 2023 beating the total of 2022, as we saw in that graph. 46,000 EVs have been sold in Australia, almost 3 times higher than the same period in 2022. That's fantastic. Yep, so let's have a look at this graph here. So what's really interesting too is that BEVs are certainly taking the lion's share of each yearly increase, which is great to see that tangent going up as well, which is very good. And they're forecasting, EV Council's forecasting good growth as well for the rest of 2023 in quarter 3, quarter 4, which is great. And having a look at this chart here. So what else have we got here? Most recent sales figures are encouraging. It is expected that to meet our climate targets, that more than 50% of all new EVs need to be sold in 2030 need to be EVs. So 50% of all new cars sold in 2030 must be EVs to meet that target. This means Australia will need to aim for around 1 million EVs on our roads by the end of 2027. Of course, we need to see a significant increase in the supply of EV models for this to happen. And again, new vehicle efficiency standards need to be implemented, as the EV Council advocates very strongly for that to happen, that bringing us in line with comparable markets like the US, EU, and New Zealand. So this is very interesting to see where we sit, Australia, compared to other markets around the world. So year-to-date 2023 versus 2022, yes, we're doing better, and so as other countries like Thailand, and we got Sweden up there is doing better, China's doing better, France, Norway, of course, year-on-year improvement, and global average is just better, of course, as well, year-on-year. Interestingly, countries like Germany is going backwards. I'm not sure why that would be the case. But, sandwiched there between Thailand and Canada, and hopefully we'll sort of increase towards New Zealand, Singapore, and maybe some of the European countries and China as well, as the years go on. So, positive signs in Australia for sure. All right, let's have a look at the next graph here. So we've done year to year. No, we've done that one. Yep, that's country to share. So let's do this one, Australia's electric car fleet. So we can see now the total EV fleet, as you can see, a tangential exponential increase there. Obviously the scale is smaller compared to the number of cars in Australia, but it's still good signs there. And what's encouraging too is that it's primarily made up of BEVs, and the PHEV fleet is starting to plateau as well. EV Council is estimating there are now approximately 130,000 EVs on Australian roads, made up of 109,000 BEVs and 21,000 PHEVs. And they're estimating that should we continue at the same trend and rate, then the fleet should reach close to 180,000 by year's end, which is good. Top-selling electric car models, not surprisingly, Tesla Model Y, Tesla Model 3, BYD Atto 3. Let's have a look further down the list. So MG ZSEV we saw, Volvo XC40, MG HS, Polestar 2, Volvo C40, Kia EV6, BMW iX, Ioniq 5, Hyundai Kona, Kia Niro, and the rest. It's a shame the Ioniq 5 and Kia EV6 is so low. I think that's obviously due to their lack of supply in the country. They are starting to pick up a little bit as we head into the rest of 2023. So hopefully we'll see the EV6 and Ioniq 5 numbers pick up as well. And Polestar 2 starting to come into the country too with their refresh. So yeah, this is the BEV versus PHEV split. As you can see, it's starting to become more more proportionally BEVs over PHEVs. You can see in 2014 there was certainly more PHEVs, but you can see now BEVs or battery electric vehicles or quote-unquote 100% EVs are starting to take over. Electric car sales across Australian states and territories. Okay, so all state and territory governments now have a range of incentives to encourage the purchase of EVs, including rebates to reduce upfront costs, zero interest loans and discounts depending on which state, and also stamp duty and registration fees discounts. And in 2022, the Australian government also introduced its fringe benefit tax exemption for EVs, and that allows consumers to purchase an EV through salary sacrifice arrangements. The Australian government also removed import duty for EVs made in countries without FTA agreements, namely EU and UK. So the ACT continues to lead the country on EV sales as a proportion of new vehicle sales at 21.8%, followed by Tasmania, followed by New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, WA, South Australia, and NT. So there we go. That is it shown there graphically, and you can see the ACT has really ramped up in the last 12 months, as has New South Wales, as has all states really, and arguably that's due to the incentives, which is good. Incentives do work. So a note on Victoria. Disappointingly, the Victorian government has prematurely withdrawn its EV incentive with minimal notice to consumers. Yeah, it wasn't much, wasn't like I think it was less than a month's notice. No phase-out period and no modelling to understand the impact of this decision. Very disappointing. While it is too early to estimate the impact of this negative decision by the Victorian government, if Australia does introduce a globally competitive new vehicle efficiency standard and as a result sees an increase in the supply of EVs, Victoria's approach will see it at the back of the queue for the supply. Ultimately, this approach, in addition to already having the world's worst EV policy with respect to taxing EVs, risks jeopardizing Victoria's ability to achieve its own emission reduction targets. Harsh, but, fair. At the very least, the EV Council are calling on the Victoria government to pause its EV tax to minimise the negative impact of this policy. Yep. We'll see what happens. All right, electric vehicle model availability. So some definitions on what a PHEV and a BEV is. As I said, BEV is 100% powered by a battery 100% of the time. And PHEV, or plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, has got two powertrains, battery and an internal combustion engine vehicle. So the driver can choose between battery or the engine. Okay, so Australia lags behind similar right-hand drive markets like the UK in EV sales, with only around 8% of new light vehicles sold in Australia being EVs. Again, we're seeing a recurrent theme there, the lack of an ambitious new vehicle efficiency standard, which is what the EV Council do advocate for over and over again, and rightly so. And that is what is hindering our transition at the moment. So an ambitious and globally competitive new vehicle standard will help to resolve the supply issue in coming years. Alright, so yep. So let's have a look. Electric cars, vans, utes, light vehicles. That's what the definition is of light vehicles. The number of EVs available on the Australian market has continued to increase into 2023. There are now 74 electric car models, 7 electric ute models, and 10 electric van models, including both BEVs and PHEVs. 91 models in Australia now, 148 variants, 56% increase from 2022. That's great. 12 electric trucks, 22 electric buses, and 42 electric motorcycles and scooters. Some more information about charging infrastructure. And we went through some of that graphs earlier about the chargers there. So that's embellishing on that. And we can see now by location, New South Wales has the most number, 174 fast and ultra-fast chargers compared to the ACT 9. There is a bit of a lack of fast and ultra-fast DC chargers in the ACT, I must say, compared to the rest of the states and territories, considering how many EVs are in the ACT, which is very interesting indeed. 3 in the NT, certainly could do with more, of course. 109 in Queensland, impressive. Victoria, 129, second biggest state, and then 51 in South Australia, 36 in Tasmania, 48 in WA, with a grand total of 558 overall. And obviously you would expect a densely populated plug share graph there of high-powered, fast and ultra-fast chargers around that southeast corner of Australia where most of the population live. And then future planned DC charging locations under various state and federal government programs. So each state has some sort of plan. hopefully it comes to fruition sooner rather than later. So, energy policy related to electric vehicles, public high power EV charger availability. That's important, of course. Accelerating the deployment of high power fast charging sites. That's very crucial. Visibility of network capacity information. Second lines of connection. Destination charging is, of course, important as well. A little note about New South Wales running one of the most effective programs of this kind, as shown by the success of round 1 of the EV Destination Charging Grants program. So hopefully we'll see some of that come to pass and come to fruition soon. Smart charging, a few smart charging networks there, some trials, arena funder trials like the AGL EV Orchestration Trial, Jemima Dynamic EV Charging Trial, Origin Energy Smart Charging Trial. So yes, collaboration between a variety of industry participants. Yes, so this can be achieved through setting appropriate price signals and leaving the consumers in control, which by and large is what the consumers prefer, rather than letting the network control your electricity usage and EV charging. So that's going to be a bit of a crucial battle, I think, in years to come. Like, who controls EV charging, right? Is it us, or is it the power providers? So yes, interesting times ahead. Big issue, of course, coming up. Yes, so yeah, regulations. Something about regulations here. Apartment complexes, that's important because a lot of people are now living in apartments without potentially access to off-street charging and parking. And there are regulations now to the National Construction Code where new apartment buildings around the country are increasingly going to be built EV ready. So much easier for new apartments to facilitate that. Of course, it's a bit harder for retrofitting EV chargers in current apartment buildings. I've had a few examples on the channel of people being successful, and in the media there are obviously examples of people who aren't successful or find it difficult to do so due to different obstructions in the way. So yes, it will be down to forward-thinking owners corporations, to help residents plan. So I guess, with more attention to EVs in the media, then yes, there'll be certainly more discussions around strata meetings around the country about EV charging. V2G, or vehicle to grid, is on the horizon too. So let's have a look. If you're an Australian driver and want to be feeding electricity back into the grid from your car, you can do so if you're a South Australian resident with a Nissan and willing to install a V2G inverter from one specific manufacturer. So we're still in very, very early days. One manufacturer for now. Okay, so EV policy. The National EV Strategy aims to increase the uptake of EVs to reduce our emissions, increase the supply of affordable and accessible EVs, establish the resources, systems, and infrastructure to enable EV uptake, and encourage increase in EV demand. So all good on paper, all good policies, and hopefully we'll see that come to fruition as well with updates to the EV policy, national EV policy. And again, the government has committed to the introduction of a new vehicle efficiency standard. Again, we're seeing that phrase come through. So nothing set in stone just yet, but hopefully soon, some sort of target. That's critical, apparently, according to the EV Council. So here we go. Priority area such as changes to the Australian design rules. That's more for heavy vehicles to help increase the supply and choice to Australia. Because some of the brands and some of the makes and models overseas don't fit into our ADRs. Incentives and infrastructure. Yep. Globally competitive new vehicle efficiency standard. There we go. So quite a lot about this and what the EV Council are planning to do. So targets include the standard must support Australia in achieving its emission reduction targets of a 43% reduction by 2030 and net zero by 2050. The scheme should be as simple as possible with few to no concessions. In order to ensure all Australians get access to suitable EVs as soon as possible, the Australian standard must aim to catch up to similar global markets like the US, EU, and New Zealand by 2030 at the least. The longer we remain behind, the longer Australians will be stuck paying higher fuel bills and dependent on foreign oil. And we've got here some proposed efficiency targets for new passenger vehicles using other countries as a model. So have a look at that for yourselves in the document, which I'll leave a link to in the description below, of course, as always. Yes, some strong and sustained supply and demand policies are necessary to drive EV adoption across all segments. So in this chart here, you can look at the different incentives and rebates and policies for light EVs across every state and territory. So that's quite a good summary there in this document. So read that for yourselves if you need to. And then some more notes across each state and territory there. And then a federal level NFBT exemption, and this is the list of all the eligible vehicles for FBT exemption, and there's quite a comprehensive list there. And it must also be a fringe benefit tax exemption introduced last year removes the tax for EVs under the luxury car threshold for 2023-24. That's 89,332. So we've certainly seen an increase there since the new financial year. That helps EVs become more affordable and attractive for fleets and individuals through salary sacrifice or packaging. So speak to your employer or accountant to get that discount. So yes, the electric vehicle policy scorecard. This is what I'm curious about. And they've got their own scoring criteria. And Tasmania has a cross because, with the exemption of Tasmania, every state, territory, and the federal government have an electric vehicle strategy in place. While this metric is not captured in our scorecard, we wanted to highlight the growing momentum across Australia to accelerate the electrification of transport in support of our emission reduction target. So, very good. We're almost there. We're almost all on board, which is great. So there's the scorecard there for each state and territory. And great to see states like New South Wales and territories like the ACT leading the way with scores of 9 out of 10 with good policy, good incentives and rebates for consumers and industry. So what must they have? So they must be able to meet national emission reduction targets, eliminate carcinogenic air pollution from our communities and towns, provide Australian households and businesses with more choices when transitioning to EVs, enhancing our national security by using locally sourced energy to power our transport, seizing the significant economic opportunities presented by this transition, such as redirecting billions of dollars each year in overseas fossil fuel spending to Australian-made energy and creating thousands of new jobs across the full EV value chain from mining to manufacturing and recycling. So that is part of the policy scorecard they have. Okay, so some more information about light vehicles and what regulations are in this report. So, more detail there. Selected government fleet targets. So some more fleet targets there in boxes. And, more policy detail there as well. Incentives available for each state territory, charging infrastructure. So good amount of detail here. Awareness. And road user charge, of course. So everything you wanted to know about policy for each state and territory is listed here in this document. Same for trucks, same for buses, same for micro-mobility as well. That's scooters, bikes, for each state and territory, industry development, data, other EV policy issues. Okay, local government now, so all the way down to councils as well. So in setting sustainability targets, incentivizing the adoption of EVs, future-proofing the built environment for EVs, enabling the rollout of charging infrastructure, supporting the vehicle fleet transition, promoting shared micro-mobility, and increasing awareness of EVs. So local governments certainly do play their parts as well. And then the rest of the document is appendix. So more definitions there, more clarifications. And then appendix B is electric vehicle sales year on year. All the data is here. Great amount of research here for anyone who needs this for a reference. And then Appendix C is quite interesting too. So electric vehicle model availability for each brand and make. And yeah, approximate pricing, battery size, WLTP range, acceleration, powertrain, type of car. So yeah, it's all here. So you know what? Hats off to the EV Council for doing this work. There's just a lot of detail here. And it goes all the way to buses, trucks, and micro mobility as well. So they've covered the full gamut of EVs, which is fantastic. So there you go, Ron. That is the State of Electric Vehicles report from the Electric Vehicle Council of Australia, up to date to July 2023, and very comprehensive indeed. So congratulations, team, on another fantastic report. I do recommend you check it out for yourselves, but that's just a quick summary of what that document entails for your viewing and listening pleasure. You've been watching and listening to Tesla Tom of Ludicrous Feed. Thank you so much for watching. Until the next Ludicrous Feed video, happy charging, everyone.